Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching Samaa News. Here are today's headlines. Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban regime have agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire, effective from 6 p.m. today, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has confirmed. Officials say the truce was requested by the Afghan Taliban regime and finalised through mutual consent, following days of heightened tensions along the border. Washington says it does not want to escalate its trade conflict with China and that President Donald Trump is ready to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea later this month. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says both sides stay in daily contact to avoid further economic fallout. US President Donald Trump has warned he's considering cutting some trade ties with China, specifically targeting cooking oil imports, even though analysts say those shipments have already dropped sharply over the past year. In a post on social media, Trump accused Beijing of deliberately hurting American soybean farmers, calling China's actions an economically hostile act. He said the US is weighing measures to terminate business with China involving cooking oil and other trade areas as possible retribution. Russia has carried out overnight drone strikes targeting Ukraine's power infrastructure, knocking out electricity in several regions, including the central Dnipropetrovsk area. Power grid operator Ukrenergo says supplies have been restricted in 7 regions, mostly in the east, while the state-run gas company confirmed that a thermal power plant was hit, though it did not specify which one. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte says more than half of NATO countries have agreed to join a new program to buy US weapons and ammunition for Ukraine. Speaking after a defense ministers' meeting in Brussels, Rutte also announced fresh counter-drone measures after a series of suspected Russian airspace incursions. Germany has announced plans to spend €10 billion on drones in the coming years. Defence Minister Boris Pistorius made the statement at the NATO Defence Ministers meeting in Brussels, adding that Berlin will lead an EU air defence shield and boost air policing with 2 Eurofighters to be deployed in Poland from December. The US has warned Russia of serious consequences if the war in Ukraine does not end. Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth says Washington and its allies are prepared to impose costs on Moscow for its continued aggression, adding that the War Department stands ready to act. Ukraine has urged Britain to officially label Russia a terrorist state. Speaking to MPs in London, Ukraine's Parliament Speaker Ruslan Stefanchuk delivered a diplomatic note activating a 100-year partnership between Ukraine and the UK, first signed by President Zelensky and Prime Minister Keir Starmer earlier this year. At least 10 people have died and 18 others were injured after an oil tanker caught fire while under repair in Indonesia's Batam city. Police say the vessel was not carrying oil when the fire erupted, and the cause is under investigation. The US federal government shutdown has entered its 3rd week after the Senate failed to pass a short-term funding bill. The deadlock has forced museum closures, air travel disruptions, and layoffs across key agencies, as thousands of federal workers remain without pay. Russia says it is ready to resume gas supply talks with Europe. Speaking at an energy forum in Moscow, Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said Moscow remains open to reliable and affordable energy cooperation, adding that global demand for both hydrocarbons and renewables continues to rise. China has warned the European Union against setting preconditions for Chinese investments, saying it firmly opposes forced technology transfers and protectionist practices. The EU is considering new rules that could restrict Chinese firms, but China insists trade must remain based on mutual benefit. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samaa.tv. Thank you for watching Samaa News.